My name is Jonathan Forney. I am a fellow here at Montgomery Community Media. My fellowship group and I, we were able to sit down with Montgomery County Councilmember at Large Evan Glass to talk about a project we were working on intergenerational queer history in Montgomery County. Hope you enjoy the talk. Hello, I am Jonathan Forney. I am a Montgomery Community Media LGBTQIA plus BIPOC fellow, and I am here with Montgomery County Council at Large member Evan Glass, and we're going to be discussing some context for a project that we're doing over our summer fellowship. And this project is kind of about the intergenerational history of queer rights in the county, and a personal story that kind of takes like a central thread in this narrative is one of our own group members, Sylvie. We interviewed their grandma last week, and we wanted to show you some clips from that interview to kind of just see how you felt about things. So it's on this iPad, and then just press play.
It's different as far as getting security clearances. Mm-hmm. I did not have to take a lie detector test for my clearances. Yeah, and so I mainly had to fill out a questionnaire, and I did lie about it.
The questionnaire said...
Oh, yeah.
What was
very
the question?
Specifically.
That's crazy to imagine, like...
Yeah, they were very pointed, very specific questions about female acts, and have you ever been with...
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Kind of like up until the 80s, there was the lavender scare where the government and the federal workers were scared of all these gay people getting into federal...
And they claim
work.
that the reason for that was that they could, be threatened or blackmailed or something because people would get secrets on them. And, the Russians would come in and know that, and they'd make you turn over secrets.
And this was mid-AIDS crisis too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Was that also an aspect of kind of like, it's very dangerous to be associated with any kind of LGBT.
Anything immediately come to mind after watching a clip like that?
We've gone through tough times before, and the lavender scare was real, and it was scary for members of the community who just wanted to help serve our country and serve our community, to know that they were being fired and being watched and being spied on for being themselves. It was a really scary time. And there are echoes of that happening now, where people's social media posts are being scoured to see who they've hung out with, what they've said, what their politics are. It is the lavender scare and the red scare all combined into one. And it's a reason why I really love living here in Montgomery County. Making sure that we all look out for each other, that we support each other, that we do value our diversity, because it does make us stronger. But I just want to say thank you to everybody who's come before me, come before us, to fight for our rights, to make sure that we can live our lives truly and authentically as we want, because civil rights are perpetual struggles. Sometimes it's one step forward, two steps back, but we got to keep fighting. And I just want to thank everybody who fought before me and who will continue to fight for all of us moving forward.
Yeah, I think like a story like this, it's really interesting and compelling because like the impact of like queer elders like goes so far. Like my uncle and his husband, like they would tell me about like the AIDS crisis and like all of the like transition between like people not really liking queer as like a term, and then it's kind of like come into favor now, but people used to just like to say gay and everything. It was like a whole thing. And so it's really interesting to have like those intergenerational perspectives, and I think that's like a big through line for this story. And so it's really cool to like hear from people from different times and see like how much has changed for the better and for worse, and also kind of like nothing is static, like people can keep working towards things.
The the fight for civil rights is ongoing. And Martin Luther King Jr. was absolutely right in that the arc of the universe bends towards justice. It just takes a while. And so we just got to keep fighting. And I'm just relieved to see more younger people not taking for granted what has come before them.
So we're going to get a little lighter after that starting point. But a lot of the people that we talked to for this told us, especially like business owners and then people that have been in the county for a long time, they've told us that like while having like a very liberal perception, I guess, there aren't a ton of like queer spaces in the county compared to places like DC or Baltimore, at least historically. Do you feel like that has been the case in the 2+ decades you've been here?
I agree. So I came down to Washington, D.C. to study at American University. After graduating, I moved to Montgomery County. And I didn't come out of the closet until after college, right? So a different time, and I needed to be comfortable and didn't know anyone really who was gay and never saw any gay role models in the media at all. And as I was in my 20s here in Montgomery County, I spent a lot of time in D.C. and I'd go down to D.C. and hang out. And then when I started running for office and eventually got elected, I was trying to find out where all the LGBTQ plus spaces were, where all the groups were, who the political leaders were, and there really weren't any. Yeah. Here in Montgomery County, there are plenty of people who live here but just spend more time in DC. And I think the reason for that is we live in a welcoming place that has laws that are inclusive, and the need to be out and organized was not as focused as it needed to be because there's a lot of taking things for granted. And so when I first got elected, I wanted to have pride events all throughout Montgomery County, and I realized there really weren't any. People were going to DC, they're going to Baltimore, they're going to Frederick County, and I said, why aren't we having any events here in Montgomery County? And the very first thing I wanted to do was raise the pride flag in Rockville, and it hadn't been done before, and we got an incredible turnout. Hundreds of people came out for this event, and it was just so heartwarming to see the celebration finally, right? We were taking it for granted. What I did not expect was the backlash of those who didn't like us finally being out and proud. But we built over the ensuing years all of these community events and artistic spaces and other organizations wanting to celebrate Pride. And so now there are Pride events all throughout Montgomery County, but it took a little time. It took some coordination and explaining to organizations that we need these spaces here. And if we have events, people will come. And they absolutely did. And there's a lot more that we need to do.
That kind of leads into my next question. That first Pride that you helped orchestrate in the county in 2019, I believe, having like official recognition at like a government local level, what did that mean for residents, especially like queer residents in the county?
It meant so much to simply raise the pride flag in Rockville on our official flagpole. Meant the world to a lot of people. Sometimes when we pass laws and approve regulations that provide protections, it's legal, it's bureaucratic, and for so many people, it's nice, but they don't know how it impacts them. But to see the flag raised over our community, that's tangible. They see it, they feel it. And so it was a really celebratory day. And then what happened was people didn't like it. There was a large group of people, not only in Montgomery County, but it started going viral. And I started seeing and hearing about people's displeasure because they were emailing me, tweeting me, and calling my office phone. So my office, would be receiving all these hateful phone calls, and my staff were telling me that people were calling in using just terrible language and being hostile about what we had just done. And it got so bad for my staff that we stopped answering our phones for 3 days. I'm an elected official. I have thick skin. I can take the criticism. But for my staff who want to help people with rental assistance, help fill potholes, and make sure people have food on their table, they should not be subjected to the bigotry and the homophobia that we were hearing on the phone. And so after 3 days, we started answering our phones again, and it subsided. But then the next year, we raised the pride flag again, and there was still hate, but we persisted, and we kept answering the phone and raising the pride flag. And this year, when we did it again, we didn't get any nasty phone calls. I still get things on social media. That's okay, because I know some people are just going to be haters. But we persevered. We continued leading with our hearts and continued spreading love throughout our community.
It's nice to see that, like, over the years, I think just by like being a constant, like, people are kind of realizing that, like, that's not gonna fly, you know, like they can do their bit or whatever, but at some point you're gonna be like, wait, you're not changing the course of things by doing this, so there's not really any point in them coming at people. So that's definitely good that it's improved over the years. Kind of shifting gears, how do you feel the place in the county and kind of like people's just autonomy, I guess, specifically like queer parents and couples, has kind of changed over your time on the council?
So there's always an evolution. I remember coming out after college, and to think nowadays that someone would wait that long, right? It's mind-blowing. And you know, our elders didn't come out at all, or they got married and then came out after having kids. And so we are finally in a place where our community is enlightened and compassionate and full of love, that kids are able to come out once they figure it out. And I go to schools and go to community events, and there are parents who want to thank me because they feel that we live in a community where their children can come out. And I know that there's a big debate happening across the country about when is the right time for a young person to be able to express themselves. But what I want to make sure is that here in Montgomery County, we allow for that space and that dialogue. And life, you know, is an evolution unto itself. And people can change and evolve, but I want everyone to know that we will love them for who they truly are, and that their life is their life. And so that's the kind of environment that we have here in our community, and I think people appreciate it.
In our research, we found a couple of people who would say, like, from a legal standpoint, sometimes when people have like family cases, especially like custody or like divorce or things like that, they kind of shop their cases in and around the county because there has like a reputation for being more favorable, especially for like LGBT sort of disputes. Have you noticed that at all in your time in public service?
I don't follow some of the local court jurisdictional battles, but I do know that all of us in government here, from our members of the General Assembly in Annapolis to our county council and county executive, and also our local judges, we are a very compassionate place. And the laws that we pass and the way that they are interpreted are to keep our families whole and safe and make sure that people feel respected.
Kind of going to your specific political history, as the first openly gay council member, were you surprised to realize that you would be, like, while you were just, you know, on the ballot, like you would have been the first, like that there hadn't been one up until that point, given like the kind of more progressive reputation of the county?
I continue to be told that we are such a welcoming place here in Montgomery County, that that sexual orientation is usually not on the top of mind of most voters, and I think that's totally fine. I think that we need to judge our politicians based on what they do, not necessarily what they say or who they are. And the work that I've been doing to support everybody for being true and authentic, from making sure that single occupancy bathrooms are non-gender specific, making sure that our elders are not discriminated against when they go into a healthcare nursing facility, to even just filling potholes and making sure that people have food on the table. Sexual orientation and gender identity don't necessarily matter when you have good inclusive policies. But I am a gay man, I'm open about that, and I'll continue supporting everybody here in Montgomery County.
You kind of touched on it when you were talking about the backlash to that first official recognition of Pride, but how do you feel the reputation in the county of not just voters, but just like residents generally has kind of been about queer people over your first term to now?
I think Montgomery County is the most diverse place in the country. We have 4 of the 10 most diverse communities: Germantown, Gaithersburg, Rockville, Silver Spring. And diversity means a lot of different things. It's cultural, it's the language someone speaks, where they were born, the food that they eat, where they pray, who they love, and how they identify. That's why people love living in Montgomery County. And I think that as we continue growing as a community, people find new love for that diversity. And the county council that we now have, 11 members, is the most diverse council that we've ever had. I still am the first and only openly LGBTQ plus council member. I hope that changes at some point in time. I know that we'll continue showing our diversity in different ways, but people move to Montgomery County because of that diversity. They welcome it, and I think we all love it.
What was your, okay, I need to run moment when you were out of school and living in the county and established, and you were like, okay, I like this place, I want to be here, put down roots? When was you like, okay, I'm running for office?
So I came to DC to study journalism and worked at CNN for 12 years. And when I was working at CNN, I moved to downtown Silver Spring, 25 years ago, when it was a somewhat different place. Discovery Channel had just been built and opened, and I moved to downtown Silver Spring, and I'm walking to the metro station to go to work, and the sidewalks were crumbling, and there was no safe way to cross the street. And I thought to myself, I know how Congress works, but who do I talk to about fixing sidewalks in my own neighborhood? And so I met some neighbors. We went out for coffee and a beer and talked about improving our own community. And so we got together and started making meaningful progress, fighting for an improved downtown Silver Spring. And during the course of a decade, people would come to me and ask me to do more. And I eventually joined the board of Equality Maryland and fought for marriage equality. I eventually joined the board of affordable housing groups, fighting for housing affordability. And I was actually encouraged to run for the county council. And it was not something I had thought of, but I ran, and I actually lost my first race. And I was like, okay, now I know how to run. I know what it takes to run. And over the next 4 years, term limits were enacted, and people encouraged me to run again, this time as an at-large council member. And I threw myself into that race, and here I am. Haven't looked back, have done a lot of work to help people, and ultimately that's what running for office is. It is helping people, improving their quality of life, and it has been an incredibly rewarding experience.
Going to more of like an institutional level for things, we have the Supreme Court case that codified same-sex marriage in 2015. In Maryland, there is the guidance memorandum about LGBTQ rights, and then in MoCo, there's the LGBTQ Bill of Rights that you helped orchestrate. So between all of those layers, like interconnected things that are protecting queer rights, how do you feel about the security of marriage equality, like going forward with the context of like this existing Supreme Court and kind of just the state of things?
That's a great question. So and I'll take a step back and I'll share with you how I first got involved in marriage equality rights. And so I was a journalist at CNN, and I wanted to leave after 12 years. And after I did leave, I was asked by a few state lawmakers if I wanted to join the board of Equality Maryland, and this is in 2011. And they told me that Maryland, under the governor, Martin O'Malley, wanted to pass marriage equality and put it into the Maryland Constitution. But they knew it was going to be a political fight, and so they wanted to strengthen the Board of Equality Maryland, which was the largest LGBTQ plus rights organization in the state. And they asked if I wanted to be a board member, and I said, yes, I'm no longer a journalist, so let me put my heart into this. And so that I did, and for a year and a half, helped raise money and organize events and talk to community groups all throughout the state. And so on election night, my husband and I were at the Marriage Equality Victory Party in Baltimore, which was incredible. And what that did was enshrine marriage equality in our state constitution. So even if Donald Trump and his cronies on the U.S. Supreme Court reverse the U.S. Constitution's interpretation of marriage equality in Obergefell, that Maryland will be protected because we have enshrined it. Now, I would feel incredibly sad and angry for everyone else across the country who do not have those rights. But here in Maryland, we will have those rights, whatever happens at the Supreme Court. And the moral of that story was that after we won that battle, which was only won by referendum 52-48. So let's think about that. Marriage equality only passed in Maryland in 2012 by 52-48. It was that close. The lesson there is that marriage equality, the organization Equality Maryland, actually disbanded. We thought that the work had been done and there was not much more to do. But we know that trans rights needed and continues to need leadership and advocacy. And there are many other civil rights that we don't even know that will be needing leadership. And so that is another way of saying the fight for civil rights continues, even if we in Maryland have achieved marriage equality. But whatever happens down on Pennsylvania Avenue, I want everyone to know that we are protected here in Maryland and in Montgomery County.
That referendum you're talking about is the Respect for Marriage Act, right?
That's correct.
And that was, at the time, only DC, Maryland, and I think Maine were like the first states that like officially enshrined same-sex marriage protections in their, like they changed the wording of their official constitution instead of like man and a woman to like two people, which I think is really...
Maryland became the first state in the country to pass it by referendum. Other states had done it either by Supreme Court decision or by their legislature and governor signing it into law, but we here had a referendum and that passed 52-48.
Scary how close it is, too.
It was close, yeah.
Oh, okay. Kind of going back to more political and campaign sort of aims, I know that you're running for county executive. If elected, you would be the first openly gay county executive. Are you just kind of like stockpiling being the first of different things at this point, or what made you decide to run for that?
I want to continue helping the residents of Montgomery County. Right now, there's a lot of fear and anxiety in our community. We have people who are not going to work and not going to school because they're undocumented. We have trans youth and parents of trans teenagers who are worried about their health care, their children's health care. And we have thousands and thousands of our neighbors who are federal workers who might not have a job anymore, or depending on what Donald Trump and Elon Musk decide, they might not have a job in the future. And so our community is changing, and we need to continue protecting everybody, making sure that they feel welcome, safe, and seen in our community. And so running for county executive is another way to continue supporting people and making sure that we have good paying jobs, we have housing that is affordable, and that we continue wrapping our loving arms around all 1.1 million people, making sure that residents know that our government leaders are going to continue supporting them.
What sort of influence do you feel a county executive could make that a council member at large could make?
County executive is the head of government, and we have 1.1 million people, and the county executive needs to work with our leaders on the council, needs to work with our state senators and delegates in Annapolis, work with the governor, and work with our federal officials. That person needs to be able to bring people together to get big things done. And I'm extremely proud of my track record of working with everybody here in Montgomery County to make sure that we do have more housing that is affordable, that we have more jobs coming to Montgomery County. And that also we are able to ensure that there is food on the table for people who need it. We have health care, regardless of what happens down on Capitol Hill. This is a big county. We have a $7.6 billion budget, lots of needs. We need to make sure that our students and our educators have all the resources in order to learn in the classroom. And so being county executive is a way to be able to bring everybody together to ensure that our quality of life is even better for future generations and make sure that everybody feels safe and welcome.
Last one, you kind of touched on future generations in that last point, but do you have a message for young queer people, especially couples, as they're seeing the news every day and all of the changing things and kind of worrying about the state of the country and the world as we go forward?
It is scary to see what is happening with the federal government, to see the president eroding generations of norms, that he has a complicit, submissive Congress doing anything he wants, and then the Supreme Court, which I do fear will start unraveling civil rights. I absolutely believe that. They've already taken away the right to an abortion, and I do fear that marriage equality is something that they're going to be taking a look at. 2 of those Supreme Court justices have said that marriage equality is next. And I want people to know that here in Maryland, we will continue protecting everybody, that we will be a safe haven for reproductive rights, for LGBTQ+ rights, and that we will continue treating everyone equally and fairly, because the reason we are one of the most diverse places is because we value diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those are inherent values in all of us, and we need to live those values, legislate those values, and be out and proud about that. And I think there will be many more people who choose to come to Maryland and Montgomery County because we will be a safe haven, and we need to continue leading with our heart.
Awesome. That's all I had. Thanks a lot for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for your